hippies are my friends. Come along with me, see how the story ends.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Professional Hippies. We're your hosts. I'm Colton. This is Dylan. And we like to meet you in the meaty middle. Hey, what does that mean? You might be asking yourself. Your third eye might be so opened that you look like Dylan. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but what we like to do is bridge the gap between professionals, hippie woo-woo. That's where we're trying to meet, yeah. If you'd like to watch this episode, check us out on Spotify. We upload every week, and you can watch it not live. It's live when we record it. Today is sponsored by testkitplus.com. Hey, we want to make sure we're taking care of you guys out there. If you want to test something like yourself or your headspace, make sure you're doing it the right way. Head on over to testkitplus.com/professional hippies. They have you covered for everything scary. But what's their motto? You can trust strangers now. I love that. That's nice and comforting. Trusting strangers.
Trusting strangers is a great way to go.
Dylan and I have prepped some, would you say controversial topics? I wouldn't say controversial.
I wouldn't say controversial. I would say the topics of today.
Yeah, topics of the day do include, should you be allowed to drive on Percocets?
Yeah.
Why not? Like, old people are doing it all the time, right?
Old people are doing it. They're handing them out. I mean, people after surgery, stopping them.
What should you be allowed to drive on?
I mean, weed, I think, for sure. Like,
You think so?
You drive super slow. You're super careful. It's always those people that are driving slow in the fast lane that are going 10 miles under. It's either an old person or someone usually driving on weed.
I think the old people is just so habitualized into their diet that they don't even realize like they're on painkillers just to increase mobility, and so they're out. As someone who's had many surgeries, I'm sure you're coming from a pretty pretty established database on how those interact with your body.
I mean, I totally don't drive ever on painkillers, but I would assume it's like a it's like a rocket ship, you know, like you feel like you're definitely in control, but
sure,
you're
not
kind of on edge a little bit because just one little tweak of a mishap can lead to chaos.
Well, when I had my shoulder surgery, I had to prep around the schedule of the painkillers. So you like in the rehab phase, you had to like know, okay, I'm in college going to class. I got to know what window can I take it so that I'm not in excruciating pain and can't leave the vehicle, but I need to be able to operate the vehicle. And the same thing with the class.
Same too. I did the same thing too. I had to work around it so I'm not falling asleep in class. So you had to deal with a little pain in class, but also not falling asleep. But it did give you an easy out if you fell asleep in class. Like I had the knee surgery, so if I'm showing up in a brace and falling asleep, the teacher usually didn't mess with you.
I had a teacher call me out, and it was one of those, it's like, hey, you did this to yourself, called me out in front of like 100 students because I was drooling on myself. I mean, I'm passed out, just full on, Manhattan, just homeless man, just drooling, strung out. She's like, if you can't pay attention, you got to get out. And I just took my painkillers, started rattling them. I was like, do you see the cast on my arm, or what are we doing here?
Hey, you know what? You're right. Let me break your arm. We'll get you painkillers, and then let's see how well you teach on them.
Yeah.
And then it'd be like you did it to yourself.
I don't see anyone having a problem with like arguing, should you be allowed to drive on painkillers? Yeah. But weed, for some reason, is a hotly contested one where it's like,
how do you test it though? Like you could do a breathalyzer for drinking.
I think that's
right?
the issue. You can't really confidently test if someo's under the influence.
How many joints have you had tonight? Oh, just 2, officer.
I have definitely been too zooted to drive before and had to ask a friend, like, hey man, I need you to take me home. And the look I get, they're like, are you, like, you can't hold your weight kind of thing? I'm like, look, I'm in slow motion getting off your couch. So
Yeah.
I just don't see how me getting behind the wheel of a motor vehicle is a solid idea right now.
I always I remember when friends would do that to me, and I'd be like, "Are you shitting on your weed right now? Because it was pretty good." And then they're like, "Oh yeah, you're right."
Oh, that's a good comeback. That's what you got to keep in the back pocket there. It's like, well, I mean, you're right. That was just Reggie anyway. So
it was shitty weed. You're right. I'm not that high anyways.
it's like homegrown. They like manicure, and they're like, don't say that about Freddie.
Don't shut that, my friend. You're right. I'll drive you. Don't too worry.
That is something I've noticed the difference between Florida drivers though and Austin drivers is that Florida, you got to be aggressive. Like that's just the only way you can get anywhere.
And you have to be aggressive in most of Florida, right? You get down to Miami, that's a holy cow, that's a whole different world. Those guys are like flashing as they're coming up to you and then bobbing and weaving in between you. It's like 4 of them at a time.
There's like Atlanta, and I would put Miami above Atlanta. Like
I put Miami above Atlanta.
Atlanta, you just stay off the Beltway. You know what you're getting on the Beltway. You know what you're getting around the city of Atlanta. Miami, it doesn't matter where you go. You have those little fun boxes that have all the dents in them, and they're just rampaging through traffic, but they don't care.
Dude, I was with a trooper once because back in the day when I worked at the hotels, I helped this trooper out with him and his family. She was staying at the hospital or whatever, so I just made sure they had a good time. And so he gave me his card. He's like, "If you're ever down in Miami, hit me up. We'll go hang out." So I was in Miami this time going to see family, and I hit him up. I was like, "Hey man, I'm down here." And so he ended up opening a vape shop that weekend. And so he was like, "Hey, you want to come to the opening of my vape shop? Meet me at my house. I'll introduce you to my family, and I'll take you to the shop." And I was like, "Cool." So I go there, and he has this trooper car in the driveway, and I was like, "Cool, are we riding in the trooper car?" And he's like, "Nah, we're gonna ride in this bad boy." He opens up the garage. And it was a brand new, souped up Hemi Dodge Challenger in the garage. And I was like, "Oh, hell yeah." Like that's
Is that thing got a Hemi in it?
that thing got a Hemi in it. It was a Charger or Challenger, I can't remember, but it was it was badass looking, black with orange trim on it. So anyways, this guy is hauling ass. Like when I'm talking about like bobbing and weaving through everything, I mean, he's professionally knows how to drive because he's a trooper. So he's also been trained to do it. And this guy is like hauling ass, bobbing and weaving. I was like, so I'm sure like the trooper, because we passed by a couple troopers. They're like, they recognize your car. He's like, "Oh yeah, they know who I am at this point." And so he's just weaving. And then when we had to come home, when he was taking me back to his house, he's like, "Oh man, I have to go to the bathroom." He's blowing every red light on the way home, hauling ass. I'm like, what in the fuck, man? It was a little bit of a surreal moment. And I'm like, I'm in the car with the trooper, but we're not in the trooper car. We're in his personal car, but we're blowing every red light. But man, he was driving like he's in Miami. It was nuts.
Isn't there something weird when you're with a cop that is just super comfortable with breaking the law? Like not even...
He was so comfortable with it.
Not even like the buffer line where it's like, I could understand how you could do it. Like pissing in public or something, right? You're like out in a park, there's people at the park, but you're secluded. You're like, all right, whatever. Like that's a minor.
Sure.
Everyone's going to do it, whatever. And I was out with a couple of cops at a wedding, and we're down in the Keys. And I asked, once one of the guys gets really loose drinking, and he's just like a good old frat boy kind of energy. And I was like, "Hey man, just out of curiosity, like, I know you're a cop," and he's the kind of cop that chases down the bad guys. Like, they get the gnarly call, like, "Hey, probably an armed suspect, et cetera," and they go hunt the motherfuckers with canine units and stuff. And so I was like, "You're kind of the top of the food chain for like local PD before they have to like escalate it to a more like tactical unit or whatever. What's a law that you routinely break? Like what's something that, that's your thing?" I mean, without even taking a moment to think about it or breathe. "Oh, for sure, drinking and driving." Like, what? He's like, "Oh yeah." And I was like, "Okay, so like you'll have a drink or two?" He's like, "No." Like blacked out. Like sometimes I don't remember how I get home. I was like, what? Like out of all the things you could pick, like That's the one.
Yeah, like still a candy bar, maybe. I don't know. You're gonna go and drink it and drive it?
I mean, that's like, okay. There's just so many laws to break, and like that's the one. But I think that's also the issue with our law enforcement not being able to smoke cannabis, like it not being federally legal. They don't have any other outlets. Like they're forced towards alcohol. I don't like what other stress relievers are you gonna do? You know, like kratom, Kana, something like that. Like, okay, yeah, maybe, but like alcohol is just pushed everywhere, and it's like, hey, you get off your shift and go have a drink. I mean, this guy in particular, I guess he gets off a shift and gets blasted, but
you know what the worst is the people, the places and bars that if you leave your car at the parking lot there at the place you were drinking at, you can get towed. I've always said that should be a rule that if you serve alcohol, the parking lot should not be towable. Like it shouldn't be an option.
That's like a common sense. Like that borderline should be a law, right? Like
I feel like it because there's so many people that are like, oh, I don't want to get my car towed for $400 and get it out of the tow thing.
Yeah,
I'm gonna drive it home now, and now I get a $10,000 problem.
Yeah, and I understand, like, you can't make that a law because free parking or whatever, but one of my buddies in Pensacola, one of the breweries that they frequent, if you leave your car there overnight, they give you a free drink. They leave you a ticket, a good ticket.
Great idea.
Right?
Great idea.
Yeah, they're like, thanks for coming, thanks for being responsible, and here's a free drink. They'll leave it, like, on your windshield wiper or whatever.
That's a great idea because it's not going to encourage you to leave it because you don't want your car left anyways, and you don't want to.
It damn sure encourages you to come back too.
Encourages you to come back. Well, you want to get your car too, but it's going to be the same cost for an Uber home. There's probably going to be more than the free drink anyway. So,
but from a business owner standpoint, what's a beer costing a brewery? You think like if you pay $8 at the brewery, what's it costing them? Maybe $2-3, something like that.
Maybe. Yeah, just to brew the whole thing. So
right,
that's a great idea.
You know, so like you're almost ensuring that you're going to have return business, and probably sooner than later.
It's just buy a jalopy, drive it once, and just keep leaving it. Like, all right, I'm back for business.
Jalopy, there's a word I haven't heard in a while.
Oh yeah,
my dad used to call his car the grocery getter.
The grocery getter. Man,
it was just beat up blue sedan. I mean, this thing, it would hum above 65. You felt like you were in hyperdrive if you went over the speed limit.
Oh, there's Jelly Bean letting us know.
That's Kai, dude. What the fuck, man?
Kai said, "Hey, I'm just gonna interrupt you real quick."
Yeah, he's like, hey, man, I don't know if you're aware, but Mother has left the premises, so this is code red alarm.
This is your turn now, buddy. This is the attention is now driven back to you.
I mean, that's the thing we love animals for. We're like, oh, I can't believe they did da-da-da. But that's kind of the reason you get an animal. So you have like a little being they have to overlook, but it's not a human being, right?
Not a human being. It doesn't have human emotions, but it still has emotions.
Do you think fish feel pain?
Do I think fish feel pain? Not in my book.
I mean, it's a fucked up thing to say, because isn't pain at the most basic level really just like an evolutionary response to like, do not go, do not touch? Like this is
it's just a way it's an evolutionary response to show like bad fix immediately.
It's like, how can we even assume that like most things don't experience pain? Because it's really just the only way to interact with your environment of telling you what's cool and what's not cool, you know?
Right.
So like, okay, maybe they don't feel it the exact same way, but this is why we need to talk to dolphins, man. They got all the answers. And
dolphins and killer whales probably have all the answers to that. I mean,
what's smarter, a dolphin or a killer whale?
Ooh. I think a killer whale, almost.
I don't know, man. I'm probably gonna go dolphins on that one.
Like killer whales work like I think killer whales are maybe smarter in the predator standpoint, and maybe dolphins are smarter in like I can bounce this ball around.
Very astute of you, Dylan. Very astute. Well, I remember that for a bit, there was a government-sponsored study into if we could communicate with dolphins. Do you remember what that was called?
You're talking about the one where the lady jacked off the dolphin for all the time? Made like a relationship.
I don't know if
with
it was all the time. I do know there was a time. I believe that dolphin killed her too in the end.
That dolphin killed itself.
Did it?
In the end. Yeah.
What a dark turn.
Yeah.
That poor guy. What did he kill his handler and then he realized like
Well, the handler
pocket
did kill
pussy.
itself. The handler was taken away from the dolphin. Like it was legally taken away from the dolphin. And the dolphin wasn't getting jacked off anymore. And he was like, fuck this. I'm out.
can't blame the guy. I mean,
He had a good life.
the fins can only reach so far. Can you imagine if you just had a back itch the whole time and your fin just couldn't get there? Like that's essentially what poor guy's going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you take that away from him. Take his itch away.
Yeah. They made a movie about the whole goat thing though, didn't they? With Leo. I can't remember the guy from Inception. That one's gonna kill me.
DiCaprio?
I think so. Yeah, I think he was the I think he was the one that starred in the movie about the communication with goats. Regardless, the trippy stuff about the government is that they'll release after 40 years classified documents. And now we have all this stuff coming about UFOs. Have you seen some of the videos that the Pentagon's been releasing around UFOs?
They've slowly been releasing like, there are definitely something out there.
If there's a guy I'm going to trust, though, it's Elon Musk. I mean, he doesn't give a fuck about what most people think. He's just here to have a good time. He's too smart for his own good. And when he was asked about UFOs and aliens, he was like,
I haven't
know.
seen anything. Yeah,
I
haven't seen anything.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just going to be real. I got a lot of connections, and everyone I know, it's just not happening. He goes, but what I do know is that the government works on some really gnarly top secret shit, and that's probably what you're seeing.
Yeah, the government's like, we don't know what that is, as they're the ones sending it out into the area.
But imagine like they're controlling those, because some of them are small, some of them are like orb size and like whatever dimensions, relatively small and like a regular drone, just kind of odd looking. And some of them are really big. But imagine being the guy controlling the UFO looking thing like a drone. And he's like, oh shit, dude, check this out. I just figured out I could do this. And it just goes up 400 feet in a second and down 400 feet in a second and left, right. And he's like, I didn't even know. And he's just one little Xbox controller. I didn't even know I could do this. Watch it.
Off in the distance, some guy's like, holy shit. Blowing his mind.
I know there was a documentary about the drone operators and how much they would experience PTSD. Like that was a big thing they had to contend with when we had troops deployed overseas, is that these guys were just getting orders and they're just flying drones, just flying these predators. And they're like, hey, that's your target and don't worry about collateral damage. It's like,
yeah, because they fly it, but they're not pushing the button. There's someone else pushing the button.
Is that the way it works?
Yeah. Yeah, so they fly it to the target, and then there's someone else that hits that button somewhere else. So they don't have the anguish, I guess you would say, of being like, oh, I'm the one that killed him or whatever. It's somebody else that did it. And I know that's part of it, but I don't know if the other part of it is there's like multiple people that do the button pushing, so they don't know which one did it. I don't think that one's true, but I know the other part is.
Like a firing squad, you didn't know who had the actual bullet.
You don't know who did it, or like the electrical chair. Sometimes back in the day, it was multiple people that would pull it, push the button.
I mean, I guess, right? But at that point, it's like, are you spreading the guilt evenly? Or
Yeah, right.
like is that causing more undue duress to more than just putting it on one man's shoulders?
You get to the good place and they're like, oh no, you spread it evenly. Nah, get in here. You're good. Get in there.
Because I'm sure they have at some point done the numbers on who can handle this. Like morticians. Most of society is not cut out to be a mortician. Just hanging out with dead people all the time, prepping
That's
them.
it. I say so.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure the government at some point ran the numbers and we're like, let's see if we can just find people that are comfortable with pushing the button and they're not going to experience the same symptoms of PTSD that another person would. And then they're like, yeah, just not enough for those people. So we're just going to have to spread the shit around evenly, and you get some trauma and you get some trauma. And it's like,
they're like, where do we get those people? Miami drivers. Get them. Yes. Know exactly where to go to.
We got the spot. We've got the training camp.
We got the training camp. They're already down there. I know a great trooper. We can get them in there.
I wonder at what point, though, they'll start to infuse AI into warfare. Because, that's the
already
genie
done.
they're worried about letting out of the bottle is like.
That's
arming.
already done. That's already done for sure.
To what point, though?
Have you seen the video of the, it's like a machine gun type thing on a warship? And it shows the machine gun and it shows it pointing up following a airliner. And it's like reading the airliner and then it comes back down once it realizes it's an airliner.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it has its own like critical thinking process.
So I read into that. Apparently that is kind of like standard operating procedure for the battleships, is that because they have that turret, whatever that thing's called, that goes burp. It just it shoots
burper.
It shoots like 1,000 rounds per minute, and so just bit. It'll just lock on to whatever is in the vicinity, so it just moves to whatever is going on around it.
That's got to be some sort of AI going on in that thing.
Well, yeah, like how
I
do
mean,
you
if we got
define
AIs
AI,
if we got AIs in video games, I mean, we got AIs on a machine gun somewhere for sure.
I guess that's just where you draw the line on what artificial intelligence would be, right?
Should artificial intelligence be able to drive? Probably already driving. I think that already driving.
I mean, that's the whole argument behind the Tesla bit, right? Is that like
Google self-driving and stuff.
Doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than a human.
That's true. I never even thought about it that way. There's so many arguments of like, should a AI be able to drive because it's still going to get in wrecks. Well, yeah, it's still going to get in wrecks, but it's still better than a human.
Yeah, I mean, that's at the end of the day, I firmly believe I'm of the camp thinking 10, 15, maybe 20 years from now, we'll look back on this moment and go, can you believe that we used to drive cars?
Yeah, but AI is going to follow the rules, It's not. It's going to be driving slow.
What's wrong with that? Everything.
I got to get where I'm going quicker.
Think about the amount of stuff you can get done, though, if you're not driving. That really slows the pace down of life, where it's like I drive all the time, and I get really jealous of how much stuff Abby gets to get done while we're driving along,
That's true. Could really knock out some mobile games.
At the very least, social media. Like that, all that time you're just driving to stuff, you can just do actual nothing. So when you get to your destination, you're like, okay, I can focus now on
I can actually do what
I need.
I can actually do what I need to do. It would take a lot of stress off too. Probably put us a few years back on your life.
And the efficiency. I mean, imagine if the robots are driving, they're not on the phone, and that's what bottlenecks a lot of traffic. Is just people not paying attention, or they're like brake checking, or you got some people that are going fast, some people going slow. If everything's just moving and grooving along, I would imagine the efficiency of traffic would pick up a lot more than the current pace. So that might offset it too, alone.
Yeah. You ever notice when you go to any drive-through place now, it's almost quicker just to go in and get your food than it is just hitting that drive-through?
For sure. Yeah.
It's interesting.
I've always kind of been that way. I've always been a kind of go in versus sit in the drive-through kind of guy anyway.
You go inside, there's like no one in there. But then the drive-through line is so long around the corner. You're like, this is interesting.
It's also weird if you're in public and you just exchange pleasantries with a person. Like if you're going to get some food and you like strike up a conversation with someone, it's weird because I mean, I do it all the time. Like go to Chipotle, just sit down and I'm just like scrolling or something while I'm eating my food. Having a real human interaction when you go to get coffee or food or whatever, like that feels old school now too. Everybody's distracted, just getting looped into the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I'm any different. It's just like a odd observation that you definitely feel that society has shifted, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody's in their own echo chamber.
There's definitely, or like, those people that sometimes, sometimes you're in the mood for someone to say something random to you, and other times you're just like, yeah, man. Like, or especially if you're in the, like the grocery line. Oh, you're buying those chips, huh? Yes. Yes, I am.
Yes.
Trying something new, I guess.
That happened to me yesterday. I was playing disc golf, and these guys in front of me were just taking their sweet ass time, and I caught up to them. And they're like, hey, man, there's people playing ahead of us, so we're probably going to be stacked up a bit. And I was like, okay. Like, I was clearly, like, okay with this. And then the conversation continued. And I was like, hey, man. I was just like, I got it. I'm in no rush. I'm here to just kick it by myself. Like, that's just where I'm at today. And he goes, the poor guy, man, just the look on his face when just all the emotion drained from his face. And he was like, oh, that's all I got. He goes,
thank you.
Peace sign. And he's like, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Like, I didn't mean to shut you down that hard, man, but like, we're all in nature. That's what I fucking came to do, is have a terrible game of disc golf. Okay. I'm just trying
or the ones where you smoke and you put your headphones in so you can listen to something nice or whatever and chill, and you're like, I don't want to talk to anyone. Mm-hmm. But then you go out in public and then someone tries to, you're like, fuck. What do you want?
No, the 3-piece, right? Like you're at the gym and someone asks you something, you're like, oh, hey, what? No, it's right over there. And you got to put it back in. They ask it up. Okay. It's that third one. That's when I start to get triggered, right? It's that third.
Hey, you got a brain. What were we taught at kinder school? Look, observe, problem solve.
Humans are weird, man. That's why I prefer dolphins, dude. They're simple. They just want to be jacked off and throw a ball around. So, back to one of the other topics that we wanted to bring up, weed prices. Have you noticed the market on weed?
No, I haven't, because the market for me on weed is whenever I make it to a state that is legal and I buy it, and it's been a little while since I've been to a state and bought it. So,
so you get it above board, and then that kind of like lasts you over.
Yeah, it lasts me a good little while. Yeah.
So you don't typically buy from the black market. You're like buying from a dispensary.
Yeah, and I got tons of edibles. I load up and then bring it back with me.
Yeah. So apparently in California and Denver, it's been a bit of a race to the bottom because of how much they have opened up legalization and licenses for manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. So there's too much supply and not enough demand.
Capitalism, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, the demand is crazy. Another component of this, though, is what they call multi-state operators, so MSOs, where essentially folks that probably honestly don't smoke weed at all. They just are business-minded.
Yeah.
And they come in with a lot of capital. They buy up struggling businesses. Like California, for instance, they're coming after people that haven't paid their taxes. And if you falter on your taxes, I don't believe this is an extension. I think this is if you are just like, hey, I can't pay for whatever reason, they're slapped with a 50% penalty.
Ooh.
on an already insane tax bracket. I mean, the taxes on retailers and dispensaries.
That's interesting for California because they're all about like we need to help people and we need to get these like homeless people stuff and blah blah blah. But when it comes to taxes, they're like, nah, you're gonna pay those no matter what.
I don't remember who said it, but I love parroting it. They say the people in California are successful in spite of all the regulation and taxes, not because of it. It just California has so much going for it that you just have so many people that want to put their hands in the pot. And they're like, here's another piece of red tape that benefits my party, my organization, my administration. And it's just red tape all over the place. And I hate to see it. Man.
You hate to see it, but it's interesting that the weed prices are going down for that. Like, I mean, it's not, for a weed smoker, that's not a bad thing at all. For the business person, sure, that's not good for them. But it's interesting that it's within how many years? I wonder how many years it's been legal in California that it's flipped. It used to be pretty expensive, but everyone was going to buy it anyways, and they didn't know what to do with the tax dollars. And now it's everywhere. Everyone has licenses that the price is going down. So supply and demand, it's one of the rare occurrences where supply is now overdeveloped on such a high demand for it.
Well, and weed, it's one of those things where I would say it's probably like 50-50, right? Like you have your everyday smoker and then you have your occasional smoker. I don't know enough to even, I'm just speculating that it's like 50-50, right?
And it's produced more smokers. Now that it's become legal, it's definitely produced more smokers.
For sure. Yeah.
You know,
people
so
that
demand has gone
used to
up.
drink have definitely now moved into like, hey, instead of drinking a bunch when I go out, maybe I'll take a edible, maybe still have a drink or two. But they're definitely not drinking as much anymore.
Yeah. But it's going to make the product better. Now you're going to have competition, right? Like, all right, well, if we want to charge a higher price, we need to have better quality weed.
And if you smoke a bowl of weed, like your consumption versus like your altered consciousness, so to speak, you don't have to consume that much to alter your consciousness. Whereas with alcohol, you're consuming a fair amount. Like that's just the way it works. Like some of the folks that we've had on the podcast talking about psilocybin, right? Like mushrooms, like you don't need very much. Your minimum effective dose for mushrooms is pretty low. So
yeah, you really don't need much. Oh man. A great episode to listen to. Let me pull it up real fast on Joe Rogan. Talking about psilocybin mushrooms before I forget.
Was it the Huberman one?
No, it was, I think, Eric Wolf. Derek Wolf.
Derek Wolf.
He was a veteran NFL player, Super Bowl champion, and he would microdose on mushrooms, and he would take Adderall for his games. Going in and play in NFL. Well, he had Adderall prescription since he was in college, right. So he would just take that medically anyways each day, and he still takes it medically each day. But he would microdose on mushrooms in order to slow things down and be able to read things a lot better and be able to just kind of focus better during the game. So he would take a few drops each half of the game, and he said he goes, I would have a mixture of microdosing, the Adderall, and the rage of my childhood.
And that would combination
help me just go destroy the world on the field. But he did say one time he talked about his experience where he took a little too much. He said on the microdosing, he said he was going to a Dallas game and he was like, that was terrifying and incredible at the same time. He's like, I remember sitting in the tunnel waiting before we run out, and he's like, you know how your come up, and he was like, it was getting a little hard to breathe, and he was like, I had to like kind of control it. And then he goes, when we all start running on the field, he's like, I had to force myself to keep running because I just wanted to like stop and look around with all the lights and just chill for a little bit. I had to like force myself to keep running out there. And I thought to myself, what an experience. Not many, you always think of cool places you could trip at, right? Or like things you could see or go do. And, what a rare opportunity for someone.
What do you
to
think?
already
What
be
position did he play?
Defensive tackle, I believe.
Defensive tackle.
Yeah.
What do you think the scariest position to play in football would be?
Defensive tackle.
You think so?
Dude, you're going against those 300, 400-pound linemen and trying to get by, and sometimes two of them. And that area right there in the middle, that is a war zone going on there. That is a scary place to be.
I think I'd go middle linebacker.
Now, middle linebacker is fun. Middle linebacker is you get to watch, you get a charging in, you get to be more of a surprise attack.
Yeah, but those running backs sometimes, I mean, they're coming right up the A gap, and they're full speed.
If they break through the A gap, yeah, you're going to have a big time, but that's not every play.
True.
Defensive tackle, that whole line, that's every play is a war zone in there.
Those guys are built like freaking tanks.
Yeah. And, it goes down to what like Deion Sanders said of the type of people he's looking for, right? He goes with a quarterback, he's looking for like the straight A student. I'm looking for the person that's, had a good childhood. His parents are still together.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a good straight thinking guy. And he goes for the linemen and the defensive tackles.
Dogs, baby.
I want the guy that's had a fucked up life. I want the guy that his parents are divorced. He probably got spankings when he was a kid. He didn't like anything.
Streets.
He's living on the streets a little bit. I want the tough dog,
Yeah.
So I think that's the scariest part on the field for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be curious. I'm curious what you guys think at home. What do you think
Now, from an injury standpoint, receiver, like you're catching those balls in the middle of the field, that middle linebacker is gonna wipe you out.
That's like the slot receiver.
Yeah. That's because the line isn't in my mind scary from a standpoint of injury. It's just pain constantly you pretty much used to it.
There's no play. You're not getting hit,
popping back or whatever.
Yeah.
But a receiver, man, that's a crackback. That's a blindsided. That's a hit tackle out of nowhere.
How many plays are usually in a NFL game? Like how many plays are run?
Typically? I don't know off the top of my head. I know it if you have
80, 90.
Probably, yeah. If you have a 3-hour game, it's only like 20 minutes of gameplay, 40 minutes of gameplay.
Well, the reason I was saying that is because the line, they don't get a rep off aside from getting subbed out though, right? And I don't know how many of those guys are going to play 100% of the game, but you're talking 60, 70 full on the tanks going at it, right? Like that's a lot of wear and tear on that body.
That's a lot of war happening.
That's a lot of war, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious. I am really curious to see how Deion Sanders' team is going to do. I mean, the whole college football world is wondering. And there was the coach from Pittsburgh came out and was talking about that philosophy, and he was like, when I came in to Pittsburgh, I didn't get rid of a single player. It was like, I get it. Everybody has to have an opinion on everything, but if I'm between two coaches, one of them, I don't know what Pittsburgh's done. I mean, I don't know how many winning seasons they've had or this particular coach has had. What I do know about the other coach is that he's in the fucking Hall of Fame. So between the two philosophies, I think I'm going to lean towards the guy that has achieved a level of excellence that very few human beings walking the face of the planet have tasted.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to embrace that dude versus going like, yeah, we can mold everyone and we can pull excellence from anybody.
Nope.
Like I don't.
If I'm one of the best players in the state, I don't want that coach. We can't pull everything from everybody. I'm better than everybody else.
Yeah.
I know that. I know other people that are better than everybody else. And I know Joe Schmo over here drinks beer before games and he's a piece of shit.
Well, that's the other thing about NFL players too, is that a lot of them don't want to be there. I've heard.
Who wants to be at their job?
I mean, especially when your job is giving you concussions and like you're having to play through torn ligaments, and I mean you're always on.
Practice is at 6 a.m. every day. You got to be out there. Now you're wrapped up by 2, probably, but you're out there, you're running. I mean, think about if your job's running. every day you got to go run drills, practice, hit something. You're like, ah, damn it, another day.
I had a couple of buddies go to some pro tryouts. They were pretty good in college, and so they got invited to go to a couple training camps or whatever those would be, where they're like scouting you. And both of them were like, fuck that. They said every single play, especially if you're a new guy, every single play, someone's trying to rip your head off. Like, even if you did a good job on the play, someone's still looking you up even after the play's done just to cause a skirmish. So the coaches look at them as like, oh, this guy has, that dog in him. He's willing to attack. He's just doing everything he can. But he was like, I don't need this fucking shit. He's like, college football was fun. He was like, at that level, he's like, there's guys that are so hungry, especially before the NIL deals. I think that's the cool thing, that the NCAA allowing players to profit from their likeness. Like, that just makes sense. Like, now you don't have student athletes devoting their entire life to something, like college wrestlers. To make money from wrestling, Jordan Burroughs is like one of the only players to ever really make a real good living from being a wrestler. And he had to be a multiple gold time Olympian, multiple world champion, multiple national champion. I mean, you're talking 0.001% of athletes that can pull that off, versus some kid in college that maybe he wins a national championship, he built his Instagram following, and he's able to monetize and do something with that. And maybe he coaches after that, right? But like, at least he can make some money to put himself through school. Or volleyball players, like, that's another niche thing. Like, I saw recently Nebraska, they have a huge women's volleyball following, and they sold out their stadium for a volleyball game. Like 80,000 in attendance or something like that.
Oh, man.
70,000. So those girls should get paid, especially women's sports. Like, if they build a following, they should be able to profit from that. Because what are you going to do in volleyball at the professional level? Like, you're still hunting down sponsorships. You're doing the same thing you were doing before. I'm totally in favor with the NIL deals. I mean,
now it's not going to be just practice, right, of the game. It's going to be like, all right, we're going to do drills. We're going to do, you're going to do your suicides up and down the court. We're going to do spiking some balls, and we're going to like some posts. Okay,
Yeah.
We're going to get those out.
all right, remember, after practice, we're going over brand deals. Okay, today we have vitamin water. Everybody need to be on your P's and Q's. 50 Cent don't take shit from no one. Okay.
Janet, pay attention.
Janet.
Pay attention. You want your $10? No? Okay.
Do you want to be sponsored by fucking Powerade? No, you don't, Janet. No one does. Okay.
No, it does. Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, think of all that, too, because all these student athletes, most of them at least, right? Like, they have tutors doing all the work for them in classes. They're not doing really any of the work, right? So
Yeah.
what else are they doing? They're doing they're probably going to have more fun, promoting themselves than they are going and learning about this communications degree that they're going to get or whatever,
Yeah.
right? The tutor's doing most of the work anyways for them. I remember a buddy had a punter in class that was from USF that wouldn't do any work. His tutor, he wouldn't even show. He showed up for day one of the class, and then the rest of the year, the tutor showed up for him and did all the work.
Not a bad gig.
Not a bad gig.
Because
Not
we're
a bad
being
gig.
honest about it, it's like my college experience. One, I paid for college with the thing that I did after college. So, I get it that most people probably aren't going to do that. But it wasn't until the last 2 years where I felt like, okay, we're getting somewhere. Like, I'm actually learning about the thing that I would want to do after college. The first 2 years just felt like an extension of high school. Like,
Yeah.
we're trying to shape you into be a more well-rounded human being. It's like, I don't want to be a fucking humanitarian that can quote poetry at the drop of a hat. Like, I want to be a well-honed sales fucking machine. And
Yeah. Why isn't there that? Like, I already know I want to be in sales, or already know I want to be an engineer. Let's just jump right into taking those math classes. Let's jump right into taking those business classes.
I think if we're being very intentional about it, you could hone college down to 2 years instead of 4 or 5.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, my business school, the first year I did engineering, and was like, all right, I didn't like that. I'm just going to go to the business school. And then I knocked it out in two after. Now I did dual enrollment in high school. So I had to do those 2 years of AA. Right. But then once I got my AA and then I transferred to USF, I could have knocked out my business school in 2 years easily.
That's something I'd be curious to actually sit down with, like not maybe a dean, I don't know, someone that has been heavily honed and influenced by higher educational systems and pick their brain and be like, how do you think this system works? Right? Like, do you think that it's beneficial? Because there's an argument of technical colleges, like that what we're describing is essentially a technical college. But they don't really have that for, say, like if you want to be a logistics dispatcher, right? Like that's something they're going to require a degree for. Like maybe you could do a technical school for that.
I think it's to force people to do it so that people have the option to do it. So, for example, right, if there wasn't I remember this class that everyone pretty much had to take in school. It was like a music class or something, the history of music, or it was just whatever, right? It was a pass-through class.
I took that one too.
But there are people that want to learn the history of music, and I'm sure there's a small degree out there for it or whatever, right? But the school wouldn't be able to have that degree as an option if they didn't force everyone to take that credit, right? Because then it wouldn't make sense from a financial standpoint to pay this professor to be teaching this class. So they go, okay, in order to have this option for people, if they want to do this route, we're going to include it as one of the initial credits everyone has to do across the board. So it's like a way to fund it, but which I think is dumb. Like, all right, if there's enough people for demand for it, then great, we'll have it. If there's not enough demand for it, then we shouldn't have it. But all colleges now, the more that the options they have, the better they look. And so they do that by forcing everyone to take these damn credits. And
well, if there's not enough demand, they definitely will phase it out. Like Harvard, I saw they did a class. This is maybe like 5-8 years ago on Lady Gaga.
But that's Harvard, though. Like, of course, they can phase out whatever they want and do whatever they want.
Any school can do whatever the fuck they want, technically. I mean, at the
not
end of the
really.
day, trace the money, right? This is probably really coming back, and this isn't even like,
That's why football's so big. That's why schools want football programs.
I mean,
bring in the money, baby.
The money, right? Like, but I'm talking about like McGraw-Hill, textbook publishers, and there's just follow the money, like that's healthcare, education. It's just some of it feels very antiquated. Like we're still building towards producing workers for industries like factory line workers, as opposed to optimizing for outliers and helping folks like, okay, hey, like what's your zone of genius? Like let's double, triple down on that, as opposed to making someone like well groomed in other areas that they're probably not going to use. But at the same time, you're right. I mean, it comes back to funding. Like the college is a business, and they have to have a certain amount of demand for things. And I would just be curious to sit down with someone that's higher up and making those kind of decisions at a school, and what levers they're pulling, who they listen to, and
I would assume it's like that South Park episode where the Margaritaville episode where he takes he's trying to figure out who made the decision to make the Margaritaville or something, or like what's the business standpoint behind it, and he finally gets to the government decision, and it's just like all these politicians in a room with a floor with these options, and they just cut a chicken's head off and throw it out, and whatever the chicken lands on, that's the decision. More taxes. That's what we're going with.
Yeah. I mean, fuck. Last thing, so we'll end it with this. I want to get your hot take on DeSantis throwing his hat in the presidential race. What's your response?
It's going to be interesting for sure. I know a lot of people don't like him because of the decisions that he's made so far for the drag show stuff. I think that's more of to protect children, and I think that's being leveraged against him because they're not, every time they're like, oh, he's trying to go against drags. All the people that say that never bring up the children aspect. And I'm like, he's not doing it against drag. He's doing it because there was people being nude in front of kids doing that kind of stuff, right? And so that's what he's trying to protect against, which I agree with. But it's going to be I think that personally it's going to be interesting seeing him go against Trump in the debate. I'm looking forward to that debate. That is going to be a great one because Trump did help him get to where he's at, for sure. 100%. He is in the position he is in because Trump promoted him, let's say, right? And so now he's got to go against him in a debate. And so that's going to be a good one because most people couldn't stand up to Trump in a debate. Like, I mean, the only one that probably went toe to toe with him the best was Hillary in a debate, and she got shut down a lot. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out for him.
Yeah, and from what I've heard, once it gets into deeper waters with debates, DeSantis actually doesn't do too well. That's just like kind of some of the videos I've seen, some of like just the internet chatter is that like once things get off script, like he's really good at playing a role. He's really good at playing a character. But once things get outside of kind of the defined boundaries of what he's prepped for, he's not as sharp as Trump. I mean, who's doing it better than Trump when you go off script though? Like no one's ready to throw hands. Yeah, he just
there's no script there. I mean, that's why I'm wondering if DeSantis is going to be more like Jeb Bush in the debates. Remember, he's playing the character. He's got the things he's wanting to say, and Trump's like, "I'm going to take you off trail of that script real quick." Whatever.
Yeah,
you got
I mean,
going.
I think DeSantis has enough practice being the man in the arena of making really controversial calls, and that is something that he's got the divisive element, which I'm not a huge fan of, right? But at the same time, he's not afraid to make decisions, and I think that's really important. Like he's like, hey,
he isn't afraid to make decisions. He stands by what he does. He does a ton of research into it and what's going on, and then he follows through on that, and then he goes, "This is what we're going with."
Yeah,
I do like he doesn't backtrack on the stuff, right? That's a very like committed. This is where the path we're taking and what we're doing.
You don't have to love everything about your leader, but follow through I think is really important, and that's just something the current administration, it feels like this like waffly energy where it's like, oh no, let's just see how the public feels about whatever. It's like, okay, who's pulling the strings back there? Where it's like, for better or worse, at least you want to know where your leadership is going to be headed so you can prep yourself, or you can just have a well-formed opinion. So when it comes to voting time, you feel like you're a part of something bigger. You actually feel like the checks and balances that we have in place are working and that your voice is heard. Which is one thing I was not a huge fan of with Trump, is like, it just doesn't feel like we fucking matter. Dude's going to do whatever the fuck he wants. And there's enough legal shit set up where he's like, no, I pay enough lawyers enough money. They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out how to cover my ass. So I'm excited for it. I think those will be beautiful fireworks. And I just pray to God Biden doesn't decide to run again. And I don't.
He's already decided he's running again.
Yeah, but I was also one of the podcasts that I follow, the billionaires. I think it's called All In. It's like four billionaires, and hearing them get into it, one of the things that they're talking about is that it is likely that his support is going to probably pivot towards Newsom, and that Newsom already has a war cabinet of like 125 million amassed, and I
mean, they need to put someone else in new too as well, but he's not going to win either. They need to come up with somebody new for real. Like even Gavin Newsom isn't a good option. That state's going downhill so fast.
Yeah. Well, both sides have to have somebody in there that they feel like.
But man, Gavin Newsom against DeSantis, how crazy would that be? Of like a debate. You have literally totally opposite sides of the spectrum, quite literally totally opposite sides of the country, totally different ways of running a state.
Yeah.
Happening.
Yeah.
Man, that would be quite a debate right there to watch.
Yeah, I think that's a landslide towards DeSantis, though.
I think so too. I think most of the
general
country
populace
would.
does tend to want to go back and forth, right? It's like steering a car from one ditch to the other ditch. They're like, okay, hey, that ditch didn't work out, so let's fucking pedal it on to the next ditch over here.
Let's go over the next ditch. Yeah, that's a great analogy of that.
Like, why can't we just have a leader? It's like, hey guys, this is this is not typically the way I would run things, but this party, I like they want to be fiscally responsible. How about that?
You got the Green Party. It's like little potholes. What was that?
Yeah, the chick that is decided to be independent. She used to be a Democrat. The governor for Hawaii.
Oh yeah.
What was her name? Ortega? No. Anyway, while you're looking at.
I like her though. Like I would vote for her. She's a good option.
Well, that's part of the problem is that enough people. Was it Julie?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I would vote for her. That's a great option. I thought.
Yeah, I think she will be running as independent. I don't remember if she's already decided that or not. But I'm classic. Hey, if I'm gonna want more organic shit in Walmart, I'm gonna buy organic shit. I don't care what anybody else thinks. So, if your vote matters, then I'm gonna vote for the person that I'm really excited about. And our options have been pretty dog shit.
Well, that just happened in man, what part of the world did that just happen in? I think Dutch or what? Some part of the world over there in that Deutschland, over there in that area, there is a party. It's called the BBB. There was like the two parties that we normally have, and then a new party was created, and then the rest of the country just voted for that party. And they have now most of the seats in that party, and that just recently happened. And it was pretty much ignored I just heard about it until they won.
Well, the cool part about our system, and that's what Tulsi Gabbard highlighted when I listened to her in a podcast made with Joe Rogan, is that if there is a third-party candidate that's gaining enough votes, both the left and right decided that it's mutually beneficial to isolate the third party. So, like, take Texas. I don't know how many electoral votes we have. Call it 40. I'm just throw out a number, right? Mm-hmm. So if Tulsi ran from Texas and in the primaries, and she was to get, let's say, 45% of the state, or just make it easy, 50% of the state, instead of getting all of the 40 votes, she would get 20, and they would split the other votes towards the Democrats and the Republicans. But that doesn't apply to the Democrats and the Republicans when they're running, when there's the head off, right? So like they win the whole states. The third party just gets percentages of those seats.
Yeah.
So I don't know that.
You definitely see that too. They definitely try to isolate. They both attack during debates a third party. It's definitely, you definitely see where they work together to try to push down that third party. Like, that's not a problem we want to deal with.
Yeah, and that's a really crude way of explaining, how they're gerrymandering on the back end, and I'm probably using that term incorrectly as well. But I
don't know. I just like to put out there that the biggest lie I think the Democrats ever did was say that they would legalize weed, and they had every opportunity to do it. They have all the power. They have all the power in the Senate to do it, get it pushed through the House. I think it'd be pretty approved anyways. And they have the what was it? What's her name? Kamala. She was the prosecutor for all of California, and you have the president. You have every power to have legalized weed, and it was part of your promise, and you still haven't done it. And I think that is the biggest shame of all this. Now, they might leverage it to try to get some votes here towards the end, but you got less than 2 years. I don't think they're going to push that through now. And I think that's the biggest shame in our current political standpoint.
This is America.
This is America.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, you got anything else for him?
Go get them, folks.
Go get them, folks. If you guys like this episode, do us a favor. Leave us a review on Spotify or wherever you're listening to us. It helps us know what you like the most and keeps us on your feed. So
give us a follow, subscribe, brush up against it. Little tap on that with your finger. It's not that hard, folks. Give us a
Till
like.
next time. Love you guys. Peace.